Good morning, everybody. It's Friday morning, and welcome to Penn Vicarage. Thank you for joining us, as always, as we continue our adventure through the Psalms. May I remind you that it's Friday, which means the beginning of the weekend, and to remind you we have some wonderful services at St Bart's Stand this weekend, and we'd love to see you either online or face-to-face. We'd love to have you amongst us. We'd be a better church with you in it, and if you could join us, that would be wonderful. But that's this weekend. But for today, you've tuned in to find out about Psalm 80. So without further ado, Psalm 80 it is. Give ear, O shepherd of Israel, you who lead Joseph like a flock. You who are enthroned above the cherubim, shine forth before Ephraim and Benjamin and Manasseh. Stir up your might and come to save us. Restore us, O God, let your face shine that we may be saved. O Lord God of hosts, how long will you be angry with your people's prayers? You fed them with the bread of tears. You've given them tears to drink in full measure. You make us the scorn of our neighbours. Our enemies laugh among themselves. Restore us, O God of hosts. Let your face shine that we may be saved. You brought a vine out of Egypt. You drove out the nations and planted it. You cleared the ground for it. It took deep root and filled the land. The mountains were covered with its shade, the mighty cedars with its branches. It set out its branches to the sea and its roots to the river. Why then have you broken down its walls, so that all who pass along the way pluck its fruit? The boat from the forest ravages, the boar from the forest ravages it, and all that move in the field feed on it. Turn again, O God of hosts. Look down from heaven and see. Have regard for this vine, the stock that your right hand planted. They've burned it with fire. They've cut it down. May they perish at the rebuke of your countenance. But let your hand be upon the one at your right hand, the one whom you made strong for yourself. Then we will never turn back from you. Give us life, we will call on your name. Restore us, O Lord God of hosts. Let your face shine, that we may be saved. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, it's another Psalm of Asaph. We're in Book 3. Lots of the Psalms in Book 3 of the Psalms are by Asaph. And the context is probably something similar to what we had yesterday. The fall of Jerusalem in 587 BC, when it was taken away by the Babylonians and the place was smashed, completely razed to the ground. The people were put into shame and were taken away into exile. And it was a time of, say, utter calamity and disaster. And it's probably likely that what Psalm 80 was written about is the same as what was in Psalm 79 yesterday. We have a time of major national problems. Enemies have come in, as I say, razed the city of Jerusalem to the ground, smashed up the temple, and were taking the people away to exile. And that's probably the national catastrophe which they're talking about here in Psalm 80, same as in Psalm 79 yesterday. Now, as you probably noticed, if you read Psalm 80 carefully, essentially you've got three sections here, each of which end with the refrain. And the refrain is, "Restore us, O God, let your face shine that we may be saved." So you get it in verse 3, you get it in verse 7, and you get it in verse 19 as well. So you've got three sections. Section 1 ending with that refrain, section 2 ending with that refrain, and section 3 ending with that refrain as well. So that's essentially what you've got, three bits there. And the thing concerning the refrain, I want to say from the beginning, if it sounded a bit like Aaron's blessing, Aaron's priestly blessing, then I think it's kind of supposed to. In Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 to 26, the blessing is, "May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace." And it says in the refrain here, verses 4, 7 and 19, it says, "Restore us, O God, let your face shine that we may be saved." So you got it's sounding very, very much like the priestly blessing from the book of Numbers. So, as I say, you've got three sections, verses 1 and 2, and then refrain in verse 3, verses 4 to 6, refrain in verse 7, and then verses 8 to 18, and then refrain in verse 19. So three sections quite clearly in the psalm. So we'll take the sections one at a time. Verses 1 and 2 first. He talks about, "Give ear, O shepherd of Israel, you who lead Joseph like a flock." The word shepherd, Jesus calls himself later the good shepherd. A shepherd, I think we have to remind ourselves here, is not like we get in this country. Shepherds in this country have sheepdogs that chiv sheep from behind. A Middle Eastern shepherd is completely different. A Middle Eastern shepherd leads from the front. A Middle Eastern shepherd walks and the sheep follow. So shepherding in a Middle Eastern way is about leading and guiding, but it's about leading from the front. And so when he says, "Give ear, O shepherd of Israel, you who lead Joseph like a flock," he's talking very much about the one God who leads the people of God, as I say, like his flock, I should say. So that's what he's talking about here. So in verses 1 and 2, he's reminding himself who God is, that God is the shepherd of Israel who leads his people, as I say, like a flock. Okay. He also reminds himself how big God is. You who are enthroned upon the cherubim shine forth. So verses 1 and 2, the first section before the first refrain, are reminding himself who God is, that God is both almighty and that God is the one who's been guiding the people from the off. Okay, he's the true shepherd. And like Jesus is the good shepherd, laid down his life for the sheep, God is a good shepherd who led his people well. That's the first thing. The second section is verses 4 to 6. And this is very different, really. This is a prayer of petition. And he cries out to God because they say things are very difficult. And he feels that God is angry with the people. And at this point, he says, "Oh, Lord God of hosts, how long?" That again, that word from yesterday, that heartfelt, how long? How long will you be angry with your people's prayers? And then he says that whatever's happened, God is in it and God is behind it. You have fed them with the bread of tears and given. You make them to be a scorn of their neighbours, and so on and so on and so on. So he can see God in everything, not just in the good times, but in the bad times as well. And he sees God behind it here. Okay, he sees that what's happened in this national disaster. He sees God is in this as well. And so with that in mind, he prays, "How long, O Lord?" He turns to God and says, "How long will you be angry with us?" That's verses 4 to 6, ending with the refrain in verse 7. Then the third section is kind of a bit like sections 1 and 2, but kind of put together in like a story. And it starts off by saying, "You brought a vine out of Egypt and drove it to the land nations and planted it. You cleared the ground for it. It took deep root and filled the land." Now, if you hear that, if you know your Old Testament well, may remind you of the story of the vineyard in Isaiah chapter 5, Isaiah chapter 5, verses 1 to 7, which Jesus, of course, quotes in the parable of the vineyard in the New Testament as well, in which Isaiah describes that God had made a vineyard, like he cared for the vineyard, but the vineyard turned its back on him. Similarly here, in a similar kind of language, he says, "You brought a vine out of Egypt. You brought your people out of Egypt. You drove out the nations and planted it. You cleared the ground from it." So what he's saying to God here is, look, you rescued us from Egypt. You put us here. You've been caring for this. You've been caring for us all this time, So given that you cared for us all this time, why are you turning your back on us now, is what he's saying to God there. And then he goes on, so he's basically saying, these are your people. You've helped them for so long. How long are you going to carry on being angry with us now? With that in mind then, in verse 14, we get the "Turn again, O Lord of hosts. Look down from heaven and see, and have regard for the vine, the stock that your right hand has planted it." So he's saying that, you brought the people in like a vine. You cared for them, but you're angry with them now. So he's saying, look, turn again and be nice to us again. Be good to us again like you were good to us before. And that way, don't let us be burned with the fire. Don't let us perish at the rebuke of your countenance, but let your hand be upon the one at your right hand. So come and love us and be with us again. So he's saying here, you brought the people in and you loved them so well, and you're cross with them now, for your own reasons, presumably. Now he's saying, look, you love them again. Can you help us again now? So turn again, O God, and be again, good to us again, like you were all those years ago. End it again with the refrain: "Restore us, O Lord God of hosts. Let your face shine, that we may be saved." So we have three sections in this time of great difficulty, each ending with the refrain. The first time he reminds himself just who God is, that God is the one who's great and who's always guided the people. In the second section, he talks about, God, how please, can you not be angry with us anymore? We're coming into hard times now. Please don't be cross with us anymore. And then the third section, ending again with the refrain, he tells you in a story term. He talks about how you brought the people and you were kind to them then. You're cross with us now, but please be happy with us again. Turn again to us again, that we may be saved. So you've got three sections in this psalm, in this time of difficulty: reminding himself who God is, bringing this petition before God, and reminding him, God, you were kind to us then. You may be angry with us now, but please turn again and be kind to us again, and then we'll be saved. And that, I think, is what Psalm 80 is all about. Hope it makes some sense. God bless you. Have a lovely weekend, my friends, and I'll see you again on Monday.